beautiful people. This is Adion from lightworkers.org. Welcome back to my channel. So lovely to have you here for an interesting topic I'd like to share today, and this is called the Path of Power. So you might be thinking, what is the Path of Power? It sounds powerful. Well, it is. The Path of Power is a cornerstone, or even a foundation, I believe, that is essential for spiritual evolution, for growth, and for any kind of transcendence. So if you're on that pathway, then this is definitely something that you'll want to pay close attention to. I'm going to share this based on some experiences that I had. If any of you have read my bio, I talk about an experience that was quite transformative, life-changing. Bit of background, bit of backstory. I used to work in the previous .com, IT, was kind of instrumental in bringing a lot of the first generation internet service equipment into Australia. It was an Asian Pacific distributor for an amazing communications company called US Robotics Corporation out of Chicago, which is now been taken over and long gone, but that's another story. But yes, back in the days of my IT work days, this was between the ages of 17 to 26. I was doing a lot of martial arts at that time. Had been doing martial arts actually since I was quite young, and was introduced to meditation through martial arts. And skip through a few years of doing a lot of martial arts and tournament fighting. I was doing Wing Chun Kung Fu with Grandmaster William Chung, who happens to live in Melbourne, my hometown, Melbourne, Australia. He's the Grandmaster of Wing Chun Kung Fu in the world, and an amazing man, amazing individual. But he introduced me to the concept of chi energy, of life force energy. And being a lightweight, I was doing a lot of tournament fighting and stuff. I found that incorporating the understandings and the practices of chi cultivation really, really enhanced my power and my strength when in the ring, when tournament fighting. Anyway, along this journey, some years into this journey, and my partner and I at the time, we got a beautiful little kitten from the lost animals home, and it was a little baby kitten, and she got spayed and unfortunately developed a pretty major infection. We grew pretty attached to this little kitten very quickly, and being told that she probably wouldn't make it through the night. After the infection set in, we'd taken her to the vet to get her checked out, gave her some antibiotics and things to try to get into her, and said, look, she's got a 50-50 chance of surviving, so she might not make it through the weekend. So we decided to take a little vacation down to our holiday house, family holiday house, off the coast of Melbourne, a beautiful place called Phillip Island. And we spent the weekend there. And when I got down there, I found a very interesting book that maybe one of our cousins or one of our other family members had left down there. It's a shared holiday house. We have a lot of friends and family come down there and use the space over the summer months. And it was a book on Reiki. And I'd never heard of Reiki before. And as I said, this was my very early 20s. And I started skipping through this book, and it was basically the history of Reiki and Useri and how he came to receive the symbols of Reiki. And as I was reading it just kept triggering all those insights of, oh, this is chi. He's working with chi energy. This is the same sort of chi force that I was learning through Grandmaster William Chung with my Kung Fu. And I thought, wow, I can use this chi for healing. Now, I'd heard of this, and William Chung had referred to using this for healing, but this was the first time I'd actually seen any material about using this energy for healing. And so I read through the book, and the basic premise was you meditate, well, this is the story of this area. He went up the mountain, meditated, got the Reiki symbols, and then applied those symbols using his chi energy onto his patients for remote healing or in his presence. So like, fantastic. I'm going to give this a go. And I've got my willing little furry subject right here next to me, and I'm going to send some healing energy of chi and love to my little kitten, and hopefully it'll help her out. So I began the meditation, and with the intention of getting these symbols. And it wasn't long into doing the breathing, just relaxing, I began to see some patterns start to appear, which was pretty surprising because they became more and more vivid. They were very organic, very fractal-like in nature, and I found myself almost just dissolving into it until the point where the fractal and the patterns were like swirling like a tunnel, and I lost all connection with my body, and I found myself literally breaking through this fractal veil tunnel into what I described as like a garden, a heavenly garden with a river and trees, and it was just beautiful, very vivid, very real, and it literally felt like I was there and present. And it was here that I've met three other human-looking beings. They were humans, but they explained to me that they were spiritual beings, and they were part of my family. And I had lost two young sisters when I was very young. Two of them were my sisters, and another man there was a man connected with my father's family who explained to me a whole bunch of things about my family history, which I later validated with my father to be true, which I'd never heard from anywhere else. Even he was surprised to know the amount of information I knew about his upbringing, and some very, very detailed things that were shown to me and told to me by this gentleman. And he told me he was giving me this information so that I would believe this experience to be real. He said, you'll probably just think it's an illusion or it's a daydream, but this is real, and I'm telling you this information so you can validate it, and for you to listen to what your sisters have to share with you. And I can't say how long the experience lasted for. It seemed like quite a long time. I won't go into all the details of it, but short to say, they gave me a massive download of my future, of the future of this world. Massive changes were going to come. They gave me the times when I should finish my work in IT, which I followed through on, which just happened to be just months before the bust kicked in. So I was lucky enough to be able to get out at the right time. And they told me that this was my path, my path was a path of healing, and time to drop the warrior and drop the fighting, which I thoroughly enjoyed, but to drop that and start taking steps down this pathway. And they also told me that I probably wouldn't understand this experience for another 8 years. Which surprised me at the time because I felt like I understood it pretty well. But, I did have some pretty big questions, like wanting to talk to God and all this sort of stuff. If it was a spiritual experience, I was still questioning a lot of things. I had never had an experience like this in my life. And they also told me that my act of unconditional love and service in wanting to serve the kitten, my little kitten, was the bridge that made this experience possible, which was a key, which is a big thing I didn't quite realize at the time. They said they'd also been part of bridging that gap and making it happen, but essentially it was my intention and the energy of service and unconditional love to heal and support another being, even if it was a little furry kitten. So she did go on to live. She lived for another 16 years after that, She lived a long time, and a beautiful, beautiful cat. Incredible, very intelligent, very switched on, very connected. So that experience I later found out to be an endogenous DMT experience. So through the experience, I actually had an endogenous DMT release from the pineal gland, which started me on a path of big exploration into what that was that I experienced. It was so profound. When I came out of the experience, I had very little sense of connection with my body. Felt like I was literally floating. I was crying. I had a full energetic release. Very, 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 very powerful. And I thought, wow, no wonder people do this stuff, this meditation stuff. Like, this is incredible. And so, of course, I sat down the next day and ready to get into it again and ready to start, having some really cosmic downloads. And nothing happened. Sat there, blank wall, black space, random thoughts bouncing around my head, the usual. But it was enough to really set me on a path of, okay, no, this is going to take practice. And that was part of the experience and part of the download that I received at that time. It was going to take me another 8 years. And sure enough, 8 years of determination and some really incredible experiences led me back to that place and that connection, that level of connection. So my point being with this is the act of service, of being an unconditional service, unconditional love, and wanting to bring through that healing energy, wanting to bring through that love, is actually what triggered that experience. I had another experience, very similar vein. It was a few years later, and I was experimenting with remote healing, and I would, at night before I go to bed, if I knew you had any friends or family members that were ill or that needed healing, I'd write their details down in a book next to my bed with the intention of through my dream space to be able to connect with them and send them healing love and healing light. And after doing that for a couple of months, I began to have very lucid dreams connecting with light beings that began guiding me to not only the friends and people that I'd written in the book, but they began guiding me to other people I didn't even know, and they would actually channel their energy through me to work with these people. And these people were all over the world, across multiple cultures. Very few of them were aware of my presence. To me, it was just a very vivid, lucid dream. Again, being very questioning, I used to question it a lot, until one day the guides gave me specific, detailed instructions to go and see and visit someone that I had journeyed with in the dream space that I did not know. And sure enough, I went and followed it up and collaborated the actual experience. It was a very, very powerful healing, very, very profound, which resulted in a spontaneous leukemia remission of a young boy that his family were completely blown away by. He was on 2 weeks to live, so he was a pretty far gone case. And the experience was validated through the family and through the healing. So from that point on, I was sold that this stuff was for real and that I need to question things for sure, but also have trust, have a much higher level of trust in what is going on. So the acts of service, to be in service, that is the key. The question is, what does that service look like for you? I think we are all different. I think we all have a different path. We all have our own unique path. Reminds me very much of the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell put together many, many years ago. You're all intimately familiar with the hero's journey story. It is the story backbone of many, many movies, from Star Wars to The Matrix to the myths and legends of the past. It was a formula of awakening. It was a formula of the hero's journey, being that you are the hero of your journey. And the trick is, this first quest, I believe, of life is to find the starting point of your path, to find the starting point of your journey, where no one else has gone before. This is just for you. And that journey begins with a wake-up call. My wake-up call was sitting on my couch trying to heal my cat at that time. I've had multiple wake-up calls since. It is a continuous cycle, this journey of life, but it does have a very, very amazing cyclical manner to it. And yeah, it begins with a wake-up call. And I think we are all going through a wake-up call, a collective wake-up call right now, where, you know, we are being forced into our homes, into isolation, the date being the 19th of July, and synchronistically all over the world, as if orchestrated by some other agenda, we seem to be all going back down into lockdowns, despite the statistics being quite wide and varied across countries. But here we are. What a wake-up call. We're being pulled from our ordinary reality, our lives, our jobs, our routines, being completely disturbed, and we are now entering, in shamanic terms, what we call non-ordinary reality, where we are having the experience of the non-ordinary happening around us. And this can be a pretty scary time for a lot of people. There is lots of uncertainty of what's going on. There is loads and loads of fear running rampant. Whether you believe in the mainstream media storyline or whether you believe in the alternative and the conspiracies of global agenda and these sorts of things, you know, there's a lot of fear on both sides of those equations. So what the calling, I think, for all of us is at this time is to really, you know, just face those fears, whatever they may be, and be determined to use this time and use this space, use this gateway into non-ordinary reality to shake things up for yourself. This process is one of a death and a rebirth. It is a death of the old and a rebirth of the new. But just be very careful that your rebirth of the new is for you, is your path, is your purpose, and not to be led astray by your fears. Doing things and operating out of fear is definitely a clear indicator that you are not on your path and you are not in this role of divine service. So it's a very important point to recognize. And, you know, this can be a very, very challenging time, okay? Businesses going bust all over the place. Health and well-being being threatened, loss of lives for multiple reasons, you know, suicide rates up, illnesses and deaths because of you know, not being able to access suitable medical facilities and procedures. You know, this is a really challenging time, and something that we need to utilize to know that, hey, we are not victims here. This stuff is happening, but we can't do anything about what so much is happening to us, but, you know, it's what we do with it. It's what we are going to do with it. So, you know, all this craziness is going on, pulling us out of our non-ordinary reality, challenging us with fears, and we are being called to make a change and step beyond the fear, to have courage, face up to it, and push through it. Because this is a process of finding your own path. Your path. It has to be your path. It's not following the leaders. It's not following anyone else. We have gone through such a massive, massive shift in consciousness in the last 20 years. More than 2,500 studies have been done on consciousness, peer-reviewed studies done on consciousness in the last 20 years alone. Prior to that, there was only 30 in all the history of peer-reviewed science. So we have had a massive upswing in consciousness. We've had a massive shift in the way we communicate. We are on an evolutionary trajectory curve that in the next 20 years, we're going to see the same amount of conscious evolution as we did since the birth of a language on this planet. Okay, our language, the way we communicate has shifted. This is something to be very mindful of. We're now entering this collective communication where the old mode of authoritarian figures, of kings and queens and authority figures telling us what to do and what reality is dissolving away. It served its purpose. It's since moved. It has been shifting in the last 20 years away from that. Probably because we're entering this new age of Aquarius, which is a much more even, free-floating way of connecting, and the air element as well. There's a lot to do with communications and thoughts, and we have moved from this authoritarian communication structure into transitioning through more of a social communication structure. Thus the rise of social networks in the last 10-15 years. Social communication structures are based on achieving not through what you know or what you've been told or what you're regurgitating or what certificate you have. It's not what you know anymore. It transitioned into who you know and your connections and your social networks. And I don't mean your Instagrams or your Facebook, but literally, it has kind of transitioned into that for a lot of people in the business community. But achievement has come down to, and success is no longer just based upon having a certain certificate of rote learning and education. And look, there are a lot of people still stuck in that paradigm. There are lots of people still stuck in that paradigm that are really struggling to break out of it and make the transition. Because when we move beyond the social communication structure of who we know, we're coming into what I like to look at is the decentralized web of communication, of human interaction. That's where we have all this information at our fingertips to learn. We can do online courses. Just even listening to this video, this is something that wouldn't have been possible, 30 years ago. So we each have the ability to forge our own destiny, to connect with information resources that we want, and have a plethora of insights and wisdom and truths, and as well as lies and manipulations to look at and experience. And as you receive what I'm sharing with you, you can respond, you can engage with me, you can leave me comments and share your opinions and thoughts, which I get a lot of from people, which then in turn helps me to refine my understanding of my own wisdom and my own guidance, and for you to also take that information on board of what I'm sharing with you, to refine it in your way. And you may share it with someone else, you may share it through a blog or a video or a post or whatever in your own words, and this happens so quickly as we distill this truth and this wisdom down, and we get it out, disseminating it through the tools that we have in digital communications. So it almost feels like I've kind of come full circle back into my IDT days of building internet systems, first generation internet systems, now being able to utilize this technology as a tool for sharing this information. Very interesting. I did have a small project at one stage where we contributed to the H.264 protocol in the open source domain, so which is now a backbone of this video technology. A small part, but our team did do some work on the communications protocol we're using right now for this video. as well as YouTube and MP4 and MP3s and all that sort of stuff, all that sort of tech. So yeah, full circle. So getting back to that circle of finding your path and looking at this as an opportunity to find your bliss, find your purpose, find your bliss. And when I'm talking about bliss, I'm talking about, you know, that deep passion of what really excites you, what keeps you up at night thinking about it in a positive way, or maybe first thing in the morning. You know, what makes you excited to want to get out of bed and get into life and get working. And how does that relate to service? What is the service aspect of this? Because I can guarantee you, as an indicator of if you are in alignment, there will be a big element of service of what you are bringing through for people of this world, for the environment, for the world itself, for consciousness. The more of us that are stepping onto our path of power, our path of purpose, the quicker we are going to see this world transform into what it is destined to become, and the faster we will move through the blocks and the barriers that are being presented by beings of lesser minds and lesser ideals and lesser consciousness. But I say this often, resistance is futile, it is happening, and you are definitely part of it. If you're listening to this video right here, right now, then I'm absolutely sure that you are part of this. You are the solution. Some people may feel, well, I don't know what my path is. I don't know what my bliss is. I just don't know. Now, this can come with time. It does, definitely does. Opportunities will present themselves. You know, it takes that level of courage as well to sometimes step out of that life of security and mediocrity, to really step out and face the fears, let go of the fears of what other people are going to think of you, or what your parents expect of you, or your family expects of you, or your social network expects of you, and just step beyond that. To step out and go beyond the security and the safety of what other people think, or the security and safety of just working for the dollar. You know, why trade your life and your purpose for that? You know, this is something well worth pursuing and well worth engaging with, and, you know, not to worry about what anyone else thinks. You know, this is about challenging yourself and getting out there and exploring. If you don't know what your passion is, get out there and start exploring and doing and pushing yourself. Do things that are uncomfortable, you know, step out on a limb, you know, take a risk, travel, whatever it takes, you know, start exploring and communicating and connecting with people. Look at people that inspire you, why they inspire you. They can often be indicators of perhaps something that you want to pursue. It could be anything from arts to music, to spirituality, to business ventures. How long's a piece of string? We live in a multidimensional reality, and you're a multidimensional being. And as I said, this cycle goes around and around and around. So as we find our path and we get on that path, it evolves, you know, and the results and the experiences that we receive and learn from, you know, they come in cycles, they go in cycles, and, you know, a new project may turn up, a new passion may turn up, you know, a new life challenge may turn up that forces you to shift gears into something else, or come back and revisit, you know, a dream from when you were a child, of something that you wanted to do and felt really passionate and called to do. And when we do this, you know, doors will open, synchronicities start unfolding, you know, connections. You start making these incredibly beautiful connections with the right people, and new opportunities present themselves, and it just flows. You know, I had this experience as well, even though I didn't recognize it at the time, but my IT business. I never finished high school. I tried to finish high school, well, 3 times. I did finish it when I retired. I went back and finished high school after I'd retired. But I started programming computers when I was 8 years old because there was no games. I had to write my own. So I began programming and I loved it. It was fun. It was really exciting. It was new. Couldn't learn it from anyone else. I had to teach myself. Even my father, who bought the computer, had no idea. So that began my journey. And through that, I discovered communications, digital communications, while in high school from another friend, and got super interested in that. Began exploring digital communications, got into the whole freaking and hacking exploration of what that was about, inspired by movies like War Games and stuff, because it was all for computer games. It really was back then. Then through a series of fortunate events, I began having to upgrade the equipment I was working with. Began working with the company in the US called US Robotics Corporation, became a long-term client of those guys while I was in high school, and then just began selling their equipment to friends and family and stuff who also wanted to get on this new wave of technology. And this was all before the internet even started to take place. This was back in the days of dial-up bulletin boards and direct dial systems and stuff like that for data exchange. But for me, a lot of people would say, when I went through the whole process and then began supplying equipment through US Robotics to their customers like America Online and Optus and WorldCom and the big players in the ISP arena as they were starting up, that's where my IT business exploded, and in a good way. And it was something that just kind of flowed. It was me following my passion, and I had a lot of people at that time. Even I was nominated Young Entrepreneur of the Year, Australian Entrepreneur of the Year, and the journalist was asking me like, how did you know this? How did you get into this? And I had to just confess, it's like, hey, it was the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. But it was me following my passion of what I love to do. And I turned down university offers, I turned down scholarships, just to do this, to do what I was here to do at that point in my life, which then began to change as I got through it into my mid to late 20s, early 30s. That began to shift, and new projects arose and new opportunities arose, and took me all over the world. I worked in incredible fields in environmental technologies, environmental finance, co-wrote the National Government of India's decentralized energy plan, did consulting for the International Finance Corporation or the investment arm of the World Bank. I went all over the place, exploring ways and trying to find my new path of what I could do and how I can be of service to this world. And was blessed to have that whole time, from that first healing journey with little Kimber, my little kitten, I maintained my spiritual practice, and that continued to evolve and evolve and evolve, and in parallel with these two worlds, and finally converging, in the last 15 years pretty much has been a dedicated focus for myself to really pursue this path and pursue this passion. And that is what has brought me to you here and now. So find your love, find your bliss, explore if you need to, explore and keep on exploring. And when you find it, have the courage to face all the fears that you need to push through it and get on with it and trust in the process, because it's an amazing process. It's an amazing journey. It said there's two roads. There are two roads you can go by. One is broad and wide, and that's where the masses walk. That's where everyone else goes. And then there's the other path, which is narrow and windy and cramped, and and full of fears and full of challenges, but that's the path that will lead you to your deepest treasure, the treasure of your own soul, the treasure of your own purpose, and the treasure of your own being. So looking forward to hearing any comments. If you like this video, please do subscribe for more, and you can also follow me on Instagram, which I'll put up here somewhere, maybe up here or maybe up here, no, somewhere. Anyway, you can connect with me on Instagram, put up lots of pictures and poetry and other things, and subscribe if you like to lightworkers.org to join the mailing list there for alerts and notifications of all kinds of magical, synchromistical things. So thank you again. Thank you for being here. Perfect love, perfect trust. See you next time.